Charles, we can hear the sweet chirping of birds in the exotic location that you are in there. But I'll tell you, I think a lot of people maybe aren't surprised, but it seems like this war is going to continue. Trump is going to blockade the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. How are you, Charles?
Great, Jason. Hope you're well. Yeah, I'm here in Thailand. I found this wonderful place that is near Phuket Airport, and it's situated right next to a national park. So it's a small little strip of boutique hotels and restaurants, far away from the madness in the better known places in Phuket that are filled with massage parlors and crazy bacchanalia. But very calm here. That said, watching what's going on, I think this has taken some fairly ominous turns. What Trump is doing is helpful to the cause, I think, of forcing the Iranians to think more sensibly about forging peace. But I don't know if you noticed that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have a mutual defense, a defense for money deal, which as Obama likes to call it, Pakistan, was refusing until very recently to honor that deal. Now they've sent in 13,000 troops to
To
protect
where?
Saudi Arabia
Wow.
from Pakistan into Saudi Arabia. What this blockade is primarily about is that India and China are oil deficit countries. They need access to the Iranian oil, which was going to them, I think, because of the sanctions against Iran, which was going to them at discounted prices. China has not completed their trade deal with the U.S. I don't know how far along the India trade deal may be. So this has now become a lot more serious than just dealing with the rogue mullah and IRGC controlled government in Iran. This is now getting into global trade repercussions with two countries who really don't have alternatives to the discounted Iranian oil. So it remains to be seen how India and China are going to react to this. I don't believe that they're going to be, I mean, we can hope for them to be neutral. Um, but if they start opposing what we're doing here, then this goes to a whole different level.
I mean, I think that's what a lot of people have been anticipating for a while. The other thing is, so Trump said he's going to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, but what is he? How do you blockade? Isn't that the problem that
Well,
it's blocked?
well, no, the Iranians think, or of the opinion that this would be a windfall for them, that they'd be able to extort the Indians, the Chinese, and others who need the cargoes leaving Iran of oil and other things for these monstrous tolls. I mean, there are 800 ships at last count stuck behind the straits, inside close to Iran before you get to the Straits of Hormuz, and they thought they were going to collect 2 million per ship in toll. That's $1.6 billion. That's a fair amount of money. Now Iran is learning that they're not going to get one penny of revenue from their oil experts because we're not going to let that stuff out. And so then
They're
I
going to
th- and
get
I, there are
blown
also
to hell.
right, and there are also reports that I was reading as I got up early to prep for this that there are attacks ongoing now, renewed attacks inside Iran. I don't know if that's true, but I saw a report that an airport in Tehran had been hit. Now let's not forget, excuse me, that the Israelis are going to do what the Israelis want to do, independent of what we're doing. So the danger with this type of war, as we talked about in the very beginning, the best laid plans of the military strategists go out the window the second the first bomb drops, because you can't plan for what the enemy is going to do. You can't plan for uncertainties. If you're sitting there as India, and now you see 13,000 Pakistani troops inside Saudi Arabia, you don't like that at all.
Why does what does India care what is going on in Saudi Arabia?
Well, India as I said, needs oil, and India and Pakistan hate each other.
Right. Yeah,
And
but Saudi likes money.
Trump's, but I understand why Saudi Arabia would want Pakistan military troops in there because we've been training Pakistan since the '60s, and the Pakistan pilots and other military people, they're pretty good. So I can understand why a Muslim country, Saudi Arabia, would want Pakistani mercenaries, in essence, to do additional protection for that regime, for that nation. But that puts Pakistan close to Saudi Arabia, and India also wants Saudi Arabian oil. Yeah, and the Indians and the Pakistanis do not trust one another.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think Saudi also likes the plan of get all of those people and put them in the wars. They don't like to actually leave the
Yeah.
manicure to get into a war. Well, it's definitely, I don't know, Charles. I didn't have high hopes for the negotiations. I mean, not to change the subject at all, but to make an analogy, when you see something going on like what was happening yesterday, or maybe it was earlier today with Savannah, I think it was yesterday, Savannah Hernandez was surrounded by lunatics yelling at her. I mean, it's obviously no talking to those people. You're not going to be able to, de-escalate that situation. You need force. You need the police to come in there. I'm glad she wasn't hurt. She's a tough lady. I mean, they threw her to the ground a couple of times, but it's the same thing with Iran. I never expected there to be. It's like when I was getting divorced, I tried to use a marriage, like a moderator, and it
Mm-hmm.
failed, obviously. And I remember thinking, if we could moderate these things, we wouldn't be getting divorced. So there is just no negotiation. There's not going to be a negotiation.
Well, in the brutal reality, remember we talked about this in investment banking. You have to decide whether you have a real counterparty to deal with, and you don't in Iran. Nobody knows who's actually running the country now. There's a battle for control, I think, between the IRGC and the mullahs. And Israel has put out through Zero Hedge has the report, uh, their best estimate that this new regime is actually worse than the old regime, which does often happen through history.
Yeah.
Hence the problem of the danger of regime change. So um, we're now on land. We're between a rock and a hard place here. We've got um, a desperate need.
Between Iran
In,
and a hard place.
exactly. We've got for the country ominous signs in the Hungary election where Orban lost, not just a little bit. He got
Yeah.
devastated.
So
Um,
what was that legit or was that cheating? I thought Orban was super popular.
he is popular, but his stance has caused the EU, stance against widening or supporting the widening of the Ukraine conflict, has prompted the response by the EU of suspending grants to Hungary. So their economy has been suffering because of his at home. Has been suffering because of his stance on Ukraine and Russia, and the people, unless it was rigged, the people went to the streets and they delivered to this upstart guy, 43-year-old guy, a possibly supermajority in Parliament. So that's a radical shift, and people like James Carville and others who have proven good, perhaps, in predicting Clinton's victory in 1992, but stupid ever since, are going to look at this result, and it's going to embolden them to think that we're going to lose, say Trump is going to lose in the midterms, which are nigh upon us now, 7 months away, 6.5 months away, actually. Um, and those people who want to go after Trump and go after MAGA are going to be emboldened by this and are actually probably rooting for Trump to fail in this thorny negotiation. I really can't think of a time when the thought leaders on the left have been so bold in hoping for a president to fail. I mean, think of that. You want the leader of your country to fail. You want your country to fail so that you can have maybe a political benefit in November. It's just
It's like
the thinking is
taking
so wrong.
it's like taking the bus to Atlantic City. There's always some idiot who starts a fight with the bus driver, and everybody starts yelling at the guy to sit down. You can't fight with the
Yeah,
bus driver.
exactly.
Wanting the president to fail is like that.
Well, and there's this really pompous classmate of mine, worse than Sheldon Whitehouse, is another classmate at Yale named Tom Friedman, who's a you know big shit New York Times columnist and author, Pulitzer Prize winning author. He's got some piece out saying this situation here is potentially good for Trump and good for Netanyahu, and that's bad for the world. I mean, this guy is so full of his own shit. He was like that in college. College, he was a good writer, and he was just modest, supremely good writer. I think he won that same prize that Jake Sullivan won, for the most outstanding non-science undergraduate
Hmm.
in terms of his grade point average. And then he was a Marshall Scholar, I think. He's an accomplished guy his whole life. I think he also married well to the daughter of a billionaire. So he's been spending his post 1978 career swanning around with world leaders, going to the big conferences, and getting complimented right and left for his views, which often are wrong, particularly when it comes to the Middle East.
Oh, but that
So,
makes him very useful, Charles, if he's often wrong. We need to look to his
right.
insights to understand how to do the opposite. And, later during the sponsor exclusive segment, I want to talk to you about what appears to be his most recent story. He's talking about Anthropic's restraint is a terrifying warning sign about the rapid advance of artificial intelligence. But I know you still have more to discuss with Iran. That's Tom
Yeah,
Friedman on Anthropic.
yeah. So I think with Iran, the biggest danger that I worry about, actually, I'm wrestling with right now, personally, because I'm thinking of going to Europe in the summer and the U.S. The biggest danger here is sleeper cells, and, and whether they have already been activated, will be activated, and Iran, remember, in the early days of this, threatened all tourist destinations worldwide. Um, and so right now we have the luxury of believing that maybe we can win this without putting hundreds of thousands of ground troops into Iran to get rid of this regime. If we have to go that route, hundreds of thousands of people at risk, while at the same time we have frankly, no longer allies, the UK, France, Spain, and others. Um, One of the reasons that I think they're behaving the way they are is that they have vast numbers of undocumented people from the Mideast inside their countries who are militant Islamists. And they have good reason to fear what would happen if they come out and aggressively support Trump. This tells you that you can't trust them. You can't share military intelligence with them. You can't rely on them. And this decision by some of these nations to deny the U.S. the right to use bases that we've long had inside these nations, ostensibly to protect them, um, only makes the case for taking Greenland stronger. The counter argument on Greenland is you had bases there, settle for that. Well, we now see what happens. That having bases that we funded for decades, because the Europeans wouldn't step up to the plate to defend themselves, in a choke point counts for nothing.
Well, as you said in past shows, maybe Trump will use this opportunity to reposition those assets elsewhere. Charles, this is nowhere near as important as what you're talking about with the geopolitical war that, is breaking out before our eyes. But something that happened last week after 5 years is that the Jason Goodman YouTube channel is back. This is important, not in terms of me or this specific YouTube channel, but the suppression of free speech, the shenanigans with social media, the shutting down of our ability to communicate with 115,000 subscribers who are interested in hearing what you have to say. So I want to thank everybody who's stuck with this channel. We've got people chatting with us on the Jason Goodman channel right now. So thanks everybody who's over there, and share it around on X and everything like that. It's you had brought up to me that there's, while we're talking about Europe being non-allies, that there's some kind of effort underway from Sadiq Khan to basically create a disinformation governance board in England.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, if you want a case study and why a disinformation governance board makes no sense, all you have to do is think about what happened with COVID, and the intensity with which critics of the Fauci-led plan were silenced viciously. And who was right? It wasn't Fauci. I remember actually, that was the first time, my father then was still alive, but he was not well. And, I had to think, do I want to get on the wrong side of the health industry just at a time where my father may need to, go to the hospital, stay in the hospital? And so I thought long and hard about, what should I say? And the adage that I always, do the right thing. Spike Lee, one time he was right.
Extra cheese is $2, Charles.
But the point is that this disinformation governance board is, I don't think the Stasi in East Germany was as bold as these people are. And who is this Sir Sadiq Khan in London? Where did he come from? I think the answer is not the UK. And how does the nation that in the 1600s and the 1500s was so, vitally important to the evolution of discourse, political, especially on the topics of politics, economics, and history, science, and math, how does this same nation in 2026 become a nation that allows a very suspicious mayor, he's not the leader of the country, to start advocating to have government resources stamp out critics to protect, quote, our democracy? I don't want our democracy to be protected. I mean, that's what that led in the dark ages, where the Catholic Church wanted, across Europe, wanted any kind of dissent to be brutally stamped down. That's not what we want, particularly in a time where the average individual has tools that are so powerful that are available to be harnessed.
Well,
don't need to.
That's what he's talking about, is he's saying that AI is being used, so that's why. But isn't it just an excuse, Charles, that they come up with any, whether it's social media or AI, they need something new to tell you why. And the thing is with AI, so many people don't understand it. They fear it. They hear this news about Anthropic Mythos having all of these cyber security implications. And so he comes out and says, oh, AI, we need disinformation governance, and scared people are more likely to say yes.
Again, that's because people are not trained to think for themselves. I mean, you go on to, I use AI now, not as much as you do, but I use it a fair bit. And you have to be suspicious of what anybody tells you. AI, people, whatever, you have to check and think for yourself. So AI tells you something. Typically, it comes, when the answers come back and they're seemingly authoritative, and you read them, you say, wow, I mean, how did they come up with this? I better believe this. Until you ask them, and this is what I started with, ask them a question when you know the answer and see what comes back. And if it's radically different, then you learn how to push back on it. Similarly, just because, a newscaster gets up there and says, this happened in Saudi Arabia today,
right,
doesn't mean the newscaster is right. You've got to go and find, and it's why good journalists, if there are any left, always double, triple source their reports. You don't just take one report. And
Yeah.
instead, these low IQ morons, and unfortunately, too many of them are billionaires and are throwing their money around, are amping people up to advocate for things like in Massachusetts. I just saw a report that some element of the state government there is going to try to place limits on how many miles an individual resident in Massachusetts can drive in a period, like in a year.
What?
Now, when I was off raising my kids for 5 years, one of them was a boarding school, and the other one I had to drop off to school in the morning and pick up in the afternoon. What do I do during the rest of the day? Drive around, check things out. Don't you dare tell me, how much I should or shouldn't drive, as if what's going on the landmass is really going to have an impact on the total planet when 70% of the planet is covered in water. It's totally foolish.
Oh, but it's
So you
also
get
just
that,
offensive to the very, like the notion that the
right?
government is going to tell you where you can drive. I mean, these are all the precursors to tyranny, right?
Well, you have some people just get off telling other people how high to jump.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not one of those people. Just leave me the fuck alone. I'll
Yeah.
think for myself. I know the laws. You know, I will just do what I'd like to do, and I'll do so productively and responsibly. Don't, Elizabeth Warren is not going to, her warnings to me or her demands on what I do with my time, why don't you fess up that you're a congenital liar who's in the Senate only because you lied about your ancestry? And don't say you did it by accident, because that's bullshit with your powwow chow cookbook from your Indian ancestors.
I can't remember. Was that a joke or was that actually a book that she wrote?
She actually wrote that.
That's unbelievable. I mean, how is that not the most offensive thing anybody could say?
I
Charles, we
know.
only have like 3 minutes until we're going to be going over to the sponsor exclusive segment on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I want to invite all of our 115,000 subscribers who are welcoming back on the Jason Goodman channel to join us for that sponsor exclusive segment. We got a lot of important stuff to talk about. Sal Greco and myself did a video here about FLOTUS going scorched earth. And I didn't know when we made this video on Friday, there's this person named, I think, Amanda, some Brazilian model who,
Ungaro.
yeah,
Ungaro.
who there seems to be maybe something more there. So we've got that to talk about. We want to talk about anthropic mythos and the cybersecurity risks. There's an important aspect to that story that hasn't been focused on enough that I want to share with you that I know you're going to be interested in. But we've got about 2 minutes left. Anything else that we are going to talk about in that segment that we haven't discussed yet?
Well, we should also bring folks up to date on the Clinton Foundation, because there's more to discuss there, which we'll do in the sponsor exclusive portion. Congratulations to you on getting the channel restored. That was an
Thank you.
idiocy.
It was quite a an ordeal. A lot of legal, letter writing and things like that. And by the way, you were talking about AI. We've got a very authentic AI right here. Speaking of the Clinton Foundation, the notorious AIG, and this great scene of you. Figuratively speaking, we would never suggest that anyone do any violence. This is, of course, a simulation of a clay animation, so it's totally not real. But that's another good example of AI. So people should stick with us. We'll be right back. Lots to discuss. Join us on the sponsor exclusive segment. If you're not a sponsor, please become one. Crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. These legal letters don't write and mail themselves. Couldn't do it without the support of everybody who has been sponsoring. So thanks to everybody there. And if you missed this great segment of Charles breakdancing, that I was actually waiting to get the channel back to put that out on YouTube. People can see that on X if you follow me, and subscribe on X at JG_CSTT. You will also get access to the sponsor exclusive content. We'll be right back. Stay with us, everybody.